It's time for Under 30. Today we're looking at quantum computing, both the company and the sector. Joining us now is George Tsilis, Senior Markets Correspondent for the Schwab Network. George, I'm going to give you, I know there's a catalyst you're going to walk us through today, but are we kind of looking at a situation that's not all that different to what maybe a name like Palantir looked like 3, 4, 5 years ago?
I think so. I mean, I think what's happening here with quantum computing is this is certainly a next generation technology for advancements relative to, traditional computing. So this is advanced computing. It's faster. The end result from core traditional computing and quantum computing is the same. It just comes down to reducing time constraints and increasing efficiencies and productivity for computing power. And so the classical computing model has been around obviously for a long time. Quantum computing is essentially breaking through to sort of this next stage in processing speed. And there are some really interesting things in this space. Now, if you look at some of the legacy players to start off with, that includes companies like IBM, Google. They're in the quantum space, but these are companies that have other businesses outside of just a core quantum computing R&D that they're spending on. There's a whole fringe of companies like QUBT and D-Wave, QUBTS, if you will. There's a lot of fringe names that are just specifically associated with quantum computing. And so this year has been really good. If you were a quantum computing investor going into the end of last year and this year, there's some tremendous gains that have been made. But I think what's happening here is there's obviously a change in potential, transformational technologies, but there's also a lot of capital moving into this space based on a lot of expectations. So if you look at QUBT, this company is quite large now. It's around $2.8 billion in market cap. But I did notice that if you look at the performance today out of the group, this one's up the most, and the reason being is it really doesn't generate much revenue. Based on what they reported on their income statement, they generate around $400,000 last year. They're expecting at the end of next year to generate at least $1.5 million. So this is a stock that is trading at a very lofty level, price to sales, with only 44 employees. So for what it's worth, I can see why this name is higher based on the news alongside the group that Jensen Huang, Nvidia CEO, is basically looking at quantum computing at an inflection point, saying that basically we're at a point where now the returns on investment in quantum computing are essentially much higher than the costs associated with the development of the technology. So this is quite meaningful for the entire space, which for the most part, in many names in this space, have gone up, 2,000 to 3,000% in the last year.
So, George, I feel like markets have such a quick memory or a short-lived memory, because now that he's saying we're at this inflection point, we rally, but it was just a few months ago that he said we're still years and years, I believe he even might have said like decades away, and then all these names sold off. So is this just riding on like the outlook of one perspective? Because, I mean, I guess you can't argue with price. We're up 30% today in quantum computing, which is indisputable. But I tend to have some skepticism when we see such vast moves just based on the commentary of one single person.
Well, I mean, Jensen Huang is a very unique person. He's a very powerful person. He can move markets. So I think what he's saying today is certainly moving these stocks. For what it's worth, he did change his position, it seems like, because going back to, I believe, late last year, he talked about quantum computing still being, development and implementation way off in the future. The inflection point he's referring to may just be that, we're getting closer towards that breakthrough adoption. And so we may be closer than, he anticipated before. And that's the thing right now, even artificial intelligence and the technology advancements, everything from drug development to material science to, portfolio optimization modeling for finance. All of these technologies all these areas of fields of studies and science are starting to implement immense amounts of computing power, whether it's artificial intelligence computing, whether it's multivariate simulation that quantum computing provides. The technological adoption is becoming quicker. And that means that this is a group that can certainly have major prospects going forward. It's a major disruptor industry. I mean, you're talking about technologies that have the ability to crack crypto codes. So that's very disruptive, if you ask me, and very, very interesting. So, but you have to keep in mind that these names, not IBM or Google, I'm talking about some of these smaller players, they've moved up tremendously because they started off at very low levels in market cap. And even right now, you can make the case that close to $3 billion, which QUBT is at, is still relatively low. But in context, you have to expect tremendous volatility because, like I said, this is a high beta name that's moving based on huge expectations. They're not expecting to generate anything more than $1.5 million in revenue next year. And so from a price to sales standpoint, this is a very overpriced stock, but there's also highly shorted. So we're also seeing the manifestation of a short squeeze going on right now. So as long as trends are positive, then participate if you're a trend investor, but just be mindful that these things can fall quickly, just like they have risen quickly.
Yeah, a good point there. And I definitely want to recommend some patience if you're looking for that long-term, turnover in profitability. But we'll leave it there. George Tsilis, appreciate all that insight as always.